Oh, bless this workshop. I need a lot of angels here. I need it hover over us, Lord, with grace and focus. There's a lot of madness in the celestial world, a lot of planets crashing into each other, a lot of fire in the sky. But we've chosen to come here and study sacred arts, one of the greatest, which is the science of medical intuition and mysticism. Something being revealed now. What a wonder, what a time. So hover over us, God, and bring your attention fully to this place where we will never be again. Amen. So, I'll give you a little. Have any of you been with Norm and me before? Okay, just a few of you. So I'm going to share a little bit about Norm and I have been together for 34 years, long time. We met in Kansas, and we met at a Council Grove meeting, which these meetings still go on, but it was, I really can say this, and I've said it even when Norm's not around, that I would not have my career were it not for Norm. He's a genius, neurosurgeon, turned wizard, turned mad scientist. He was born to be that. And I really do believe we're meant to meet certain people in our lives. Other people are options and other people are catastrophes. But I really do believe that I was destined to meet Norm. Because I would not have pursued my skill as a medical intuitive because I had no interest in it whatsoever. I have no background in medicine, no background, and I had no interest in healing. I was in publishing, and this ability kind of awakened. But to that point, my background, which was heavily seeped in religion and the non-physical world in a very sacred way, laid the groundwork for me, in that communicating, being in touch with the non-physical world. The fact that I was educated by nuns all the way through graduate school, and my undergraduate college is a convent. And the 8th American saint was recently canonized from there. So healings are actually happening there. So I had this atmosphere of true, can we turn off our phones? So healings are actually happening there. So it wasn't unusual. It wasn't like every day, but when the idea of like a miracle was not something that made your jaw drop. It made you drop to your knees, but your jaw didn't drop. So it was a different type of awe. It was a awe within the realm of course. Not awe within the realm of I don't believe. It was, this is what happens when you do believe. That's something I intend to emphasize, which is the world in which you dwell, which is up to you to decide, become the parameters of what you can and cannot experience. It's what it is you decide you can dwell in. And handle the consequences of what you dwell in. Because, for example, a miracle. What is a miracle? for a non-believer, a miracle is something that they simply can't figure out, because the first tool a non-believer brings to the table is their intellect and the position of disprove. You have to prove this happened because I don't believe. And this is critical to how I will approach everything this weekend with you. Which is, there was a time when I would teach the science of medical intuition on lead. After so many years of really returning to mystical theology, I now know and deeply believe that the science is the caboose on my train, that the engine is understanding the mystical laws. And with an understanding of the construct of the mystical laws, healing, the organization of your nature, the way you are. If you follow what Jesus said, these and other things can you do. Why are you in awe? The way Buddha said, this is the structure. Everything else you see is illusion. If you understand the laws, then nothing is even a miracle, because you get the laws. And as Sister Kevin, one of the nuns from my community, from that community, said, when she was interviewed by CNN for one of the miracles that put the foundress into sainthood, and she was asked, what is a miracle? And she said, a miracle is when God bends the laws of the universe just for you. Which gives you an idea of a way in which to engage for me, where I believe we are going at this pivotal, extraordinary time in human evolution, that there's a collision with the gods. The traditional religions, and once again, Catholicism just got torpedoed brutally, in the worst, hideous, ugly way, once again. And I am not surprised, but it is shameful, especially for those of us who come from that tradition. It is ugly. But to that end, what we are witnessing is the breakdown of traditions that can no longer sustain who we are and what is essential to the next stage of our survival as a global community. And what I have learned as a medical intuitive, and I came to this conclusion not as a theologian in mystical theology, but as a medical intuitive, in which my route in studying healing, and this is where I'll go with you, was that I went from why people don't heal to wondering about healing. And that's when the soul met the laws of science for me, and then the mystical laws, and that's when they merged for me. And the laws of the soul, like the laws of the science, are laws that integrate us. The laws of nature never separate us. They never separate. They're laws of integration. They're laws of whole. They're laws that bring us together. Now, this is urgent to understand, because laws of religion separate us. So we've reached a point where religion is colliding with health. If you really understand what I've just said to you, that while your mind may want to cling to the traditions of religion, at the end of the day, if you are pursuing a deeply profound mystical life, if you are really about the task of becoming a whole creature of light, then you need to make that transition. You really are in, and you want to, committed to want to understand all the teachings that Norm is going to give you, and all the teachings I'm going to give you about your human energy system, and then the mansions, and then the laws of the universe, and you want to integrate them. Integrate. Pull it together. All is one. What you do to one, you do to the whole. That is a biological truth, and it's a mystical truth. And it is a social truth, and it is a psychic truth. The fact is, the majority of people are not prepared to live by that. That is a high altitude truth. You can't decide, well, I want to live with that truth with certain people, but not with those people. No. That's not how truth works. It is an all or nothing commitment. And when you get that, it is you who goes on the cross. It is you who has to say, I have to get everything out of me that cannot abide by this truth. I am the problem. Because I can't function at this level. It's too much truth for me. I can't yet see everybody as equal. Well then, on your knees, and as Teresa of Avila would say, go peel potatoes. Because you need to be embraced, but you're recognizing that the problem is not out there, it's in here. So medical intuition for me is no longer about teaching people to close their eyes and buzz and this and that. No. It's about understanding the whole of everything. Your nature itself, and getting that what we do to each one, we do to everybody, including all animals. All life breathes together. And we are in this profound mystical journey of making this transition from truly one epoch of life. We're about to enter a galactic era. We're about to really get that we're not the only ones residing in this galaxy, this universe of billions of galaxies. We're about to get out of this ego of ours and recognize how much of our precious life we spend destroying this planet, destroying each other. That this is this moment where we have to choose to stop living at that level of fear. It's got to stop. And how much of it each comes from each of us, and that is what will resolve the illnesses we struggle with. And that I believe truly we are carrying a collective depression, a collective sorrow, which is why we have this epidemic of depression, an epidemic of psychic disorders. So that is what I'm going to all about. That's what I'm going to be approaching it this time. And I want to say that I'm going to go back to when I met Norm. I started out, I would be doing none of this if it weren't for him. And when we met, and I said, I'll never forget that. He won't either. He was peeling, and someone, a dear friend, the friend who introduced us, just passed away. Her name was Pat Norris. And she and her father and the little team discovered and refined something called biofeedback. Maybe you've heard of that. So Pat said to me, that doctor over there is Dr. Norm Shealy. He studies people who are medically intuitive. She called it clairvoyant. So he was sitting at a table and he had his glasses down at the edge of his nose. He was peeling an apple. And I said, Dr. Shealy, could I talk to you for a minute? What do you want? Charming. And I said, I think I'm one of those people. He said, how good are you? And he said, I don't need someone to tell me their energy's off. I didn't see that much. And he intimidated me. And I said, I don't know, because I really didn't know. And the thing is, and here's one of the geniuses of God, to say I had no interest in this truly is a masterpiece of understatement. And I really had a passion, and I always had a passion to be a great fiction author, to be a Charles Dickens or a Bronte. That was my fantasy. And to write one of those novels that would live forever. And to think those wonderful sentences. Not this. And so, Norm said he would call me, which he did, and we began readings. And I never took a class in anything that had anything to do with anything. And so when he called and I did the first reading, and I said, I don't know, he's in Springfield, Missouri, and I was in Walpole, New Hampshire. And I remember that reading, and this Norm said, well, what kind of information? And I needed the person's permission. And I said, well, give me their age, but not because I'm an astrologer. Because I needed, I don't know, give me some coordinates. I could have easily said, why don't you just grab hold of his shoe? I mean, I don't know. We're starting. But it worked. And data came in. And data comes in, and this is as true for you as it is for me. There is no difference. And this is an important thing to understand. For me, from day one, I was born with a real impersonal sense of relationship, both with people and with life. I have very impersonal wiring. I don't know how to communicate that, except that I have a natural understanding. If I have a great genius, a great gift that God gave me, that was a suffering when I was younger, it's that I'm naturally wired in an impersonal way. So that when I say to you, the greatest thing you can give yourself is to not take your own life personally. And I just fell off the rails for the first time in probably 25 years. And I felt personal for the first time, and I don't like it. No, I don't like it. I don't know that climate because I don't live there. I don't live there. I live in a very distant world, and I'm very comfortable there. So when I say to you to not take your own life personally, I will get into the bits and pieces of that, because that's the nature of God. This is an orderly universe. Everything is law, and there's nothing personal about law. Nothing. If we all jump off a building, we're all falling, and there's nothing personal about that. So for you to turn around and weave a personal narrative about poor you, I fell off that building, and to decide the building was built to make you suffer, is a fiction of your own creation. But that's exactly what we do with our life. What makes everything personal is prayer. So life does become intimate, but you have to understand how, where intimacy comes in. And it's not because somehow or other there's something special about you. There's not. But how it is you respond to life, you have the capacity to see something in life nobody else has seen. That's what's special. You have the capacity to recognize something that's never been given to life before. And to do something about it. To paint something that's never been painted before. To write something that's never been written. To help out in a way that's never been helped out, been given before. That's special. So, is she okay? Coffee and faith. So, understanding these two principles also allows you to understand how to read your own intuition. Intuition is an impersonal force. It's simply the next level of skills. As we'll go into that in the morning, not tonight. But it's the next level of our sensory system. The idea that you're gifted, you're special, is nonsense. Never burden yourself with any of that. Never. The reason I think I became good at it is because I never put expectations. Because that was the greatest thing, because I never even heard of this skill. Therefore, I never came to the party with expectations, with, I'm going to make a career out of this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. This is where you get yourself into big trouble. Because you load up something with something it's not and never meant to. So there's a lot that's important to learn that clears the way for the natural evolution of your own abilities that have been there all along. Does that sound good to you? Finally, before I turn over to Norm for his half, let me say that I really think that it's a privilege to be alive now. It is a privilege, and it is also a challenge. And what makes this, I think, the most extraordinary challenge is that our inner senses are perceiving one world, and our outer senses are trying to cling to another. Okay? So what's happening is that the energetic world in which we are now dwelling, our internet, our energy world, our invisible world, is becoming real to us in a way that we do not know how to convert to real. In other words, we dwell all day in the energy world without a way of actually converting it to real for us. We don't know how to make that real. You spend all day just holding a phone, but that's your only connection to nothing. That's your only connection, which is why people can't let it go. It's their only connection to an entire universe of life. But where is that universe? And if I said that's how cluttered your soul is, that's how full of data your soul is, it's always been that way. But you have nothing physical to cling to that allows you access in the same way to your internet as you do your internet. There's no difference. But this is the era when the two are coming together. And we are actually living through a shifting in our relationship to physical time, to our senses of space. So we have people who now manage time. What does that mean? But it's the truth. And one of the reasons we take our time with things like forgiveness, with everything, is because we are actually, and we take our time with acknowledging our intuitive skills, our intuitive perception, and we say things like, I'm not sure, I don't get it. You get it. You know exactly what you just got hit with. But you take your time acknowledging is because when you get something, you have to act on it. And the faster you get it, the faster you act, the faster your life changes. So the way you get to regulate speed is that you have to slow down the speed at which you get something. And if what you're slowing down is emotional data, then that creates psychic suffering. And oftentimes, in order to slow something down for as long as 2 years, 3 years, and to depress speed, you need medication. And that's why we've become addicts. We are actually we're trying to slow the speed at which things are shifting. It's another thing that we want to talk about. So there's a lot going on in our world. A whole lot. A whole lot. Nothing is as simple. This is why I don't do readings anymore, because they're not simple. When you actually understand what's going on, nothing's as simple as what people would like it to be, which is just tell me what's wrong and how to get out of it. And that's the person who wants to reduce the hologram in which we now dwell back to the old way in which one cause, one solution. The days of nostalgia, which we wish we could take everything back to, the country, the world, the way. Those days are over. We can only go forward. And that is the crisis of our time. Whether that crisis is in us spiritually, psychically, it is everywhere you see. Because what is in one is in the whole. Got it? Okay. Norm Shealy.
What Carolyn calls impersonal, to me, is my favorite word in the world. Detachment.
Yeah.
If you cannot change it, if you don't have the energy, the power to make a change, then who the hell cares? That's the way I look at it, detachment. For instance, unquestionably the worst thing humanity has done, more or less, to this point in time, is create nuclear energy. I've felt that since the beginning. It could destroy the planet, and yet it is so stupidly used. Right now, the background radioactivity in this country is twice what it was before Fukushima. I am finding in the blood of urine when I test for heavy metals, uranium. It's out of the air. And we could spend a lot of time on that. But I could kill myself or try to kill Congress, but I can't change it. Therefore, I'm detached from it. Now, that wasn't always me. And it isn't always me now, but it is 99% of the time. Basically, I started out at age 4 to be a physician, at age 16 to be a neurosurgeon. And in my neurosurgical residency, I was appalled at how we were doing pain management. We were actually going into the operating room, opening the spine, taking the bone off the back, and cutting and taking an old one-edged razor blade, at least it was sterile, breaking a hunk of it off, putting a little tiny pair of pliers-like things, and cutting the front half of the spinal cord. That was called a cordotomy. And I looked at that the first time, I thought, this is barbarian. Now, it does relieve pain for about 4 years in 80% of people. And it paralyzes 10% of people. And it paralyzes the bladder and bowel as well as the leg and another 10% of people. And it causes 10% of the people to have a new pain that's 10 times worse than they started with. And 100% never have another orgasm, but who cares? They can't do that anyway with everything else that's said. And the patients never told any of that beforehand. So when I finished my neurosurgical residency, I spent 3 years trying to find an alternative for controlling pain without destroying the nervous system. And I came up with something called spinal cord stimulation. And when I presented that in 1966 to the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, I was on a little stage not higher than this, and neurosurgeons came up, "You're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, it's animals, you can't talk about it." They almost beat me up, physically. The article was turned down for publication in the Journal of Neurosurgery. 3 years later, when I had done my first 8 patients, every neurosurgeon in the room wanted to do the procedure. I often say surgeons rush in where angels fear to tread. But all of a sudden, I'm being sent 400 people a year for this surgical procedure, essentially implanting a pacemaker over the spinal cord. And I looked at them, and 94% of them were so damaged from 5 to 7 unsuccessful back operations, narcotics and tranquilizers, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I couldn't imagine doing another operation on a person who's that damaged. So that in 1971, out of the blue, I decided I had to quit neurosurgery and find out how to treat these people who had been mangled by the medical profession. And I started a program of behavioral modification. We put people in the hospital for a month and ignored them and taught them lots of other things which we can go into as we progress over the weekend. At the end of the first year, I happened to go to a meeting in Virginia Beach. And that was really the beginning of my own personal step out of physical reality. The first evening, I attended a harp concert. I'd never heard a live harp before. And all of a sudden, in the midst of the harp, thank God it was a bit higher than this building, in the middle of a harp concert, I was out of body looking at the crowd below. And that was my transformation to beginning to understand that dimension between physical reality and what Carolyn referred to as mysticism. To me, religion is the fight for God because they fight everybody. If it ain't my religion, it's wrong. And to me, mysticism is the search for God. And if you're lucky, you get at least part of it. I've written all this in a book called Conversations with G, A Physician's Encounter with Heaven. But basically, What I've learned over these last years is what one of my patients just sent me an email this week saying, I finally figured out my anxiety is my emotions. Anxiety is fear of something. Most of the time, it's not a very real fear. It's an imagined fear, but it doesn't matter whether it's real or not, because if you can't change it, you got to detach from it. It's that simple. Now, I can teach you all kinds of techniques for detachment, but you have to be ready. It's like everything else. Only 3% of Americans have basic health habits. Only 3, actually it's 2.7, but I rounded off to 3. 3% have the essential health habits. I'm going to ask you this question. Be honest. How many of you have these health habits? No smoking, a normal body mass index, eating a minimum, this is like breathing, a minimum of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, exercising 30 minutes, 5 days a week or more, and sleeping 7 or 8 hours every night. 2.7% of Americans have those. And in my opinion, any one of those habits lacking can cause every known disease. It's true. There's statistics proving that. People who don't eat 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day have an increased risk of every known disease. People who don't exercise 30 minutes 5 days a week have a much higher instance of every known disease, and so on it goes. There's statistics. I mean, the literature is all over the place. Thank God for the internet, because we could search that at least and find hundreds of articles on each one of these subjects. So the question is, if you want to have your own optimal health, mentally, physically, emotionally, intuitively, you got to be healthy to start with. You can't be intuitively accurate if you're not healthy. Once you do that, your intuition is wide open. There are other things you could do that can add to it, all kinds of practices that can assist you. But if you have anger, guilt, anxiety, or depression over anything that's blocking you, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be serious, it could be minor. It doesn't matter, because you cannot function optimally if you have anger, guilt, anxiety, or depression. That's in addition to the habits. Now, in general, most of the people who don't have the good health habits also have anxiety and depression. Actually, 40% of Americans are clinically depressed. 40%. Another 40% have what I call subclinical depression. They're about that close to it, but officially filling out the forms that answer the question, they're not quite depressed yet.
What are the characteristics of
Sorry?
What are the characteristics of characteristics?
What are the characteristics?
Yeah, between the...
Well, there's a test. There's several tests that are official for making the diagnosis. The one I use, because in the public domain I'd have to pay $1.25 to do the test, is the Zung, Z-U-N-G. And basically, it's like on a scale of, they have all the time, some of the time, none of the time. You know, you answer each of these questions. There are 20 questions. And they go from, I have crying spells. Some of the time, all of, you know, that kind of thing. I sleep well. My memory's good. And it just goes through 20 specific questions like that. And you can have a score. The lowest score you can have is 20, because there are 20 questions. And the highest is obviously 80. And my average patient has a score somewhere around 50, with some of them going way up and some being, I consider a score officially of 40 to be depression. So you only have to, instead of having all of them in the 4s, if you have all of them in the 2s, you're still clinically depressed. And depression is the easiest thing in the world to treat. There's supplements that can cure it. There are all kinds of mental exercise that can cure it. And the same is true of anxiety. It's a question of, am I ready to take care of myself? In my opinion, there's only one purpose in life. The purpose in life is to help people. And it doesn't matter whether you put this carpet down, that's just as important as anything I can do, because I couldn't do it very well and would not enjoy doing it, or make this microphone. It doesn't matter. Helping people. But you can't, most of the time, help people adequately if you're not helping yourself. Health begins at home. Health begins with your choosing to give up unhealthy habits and to focus on taking care of yourself. Your primary responsibility, in my opinion, is to take care of yourself so you're not a drag on anybody else. I don't want to be other people to have to keep me functioning. And therefore, I take care of myself. Interestingly, in 2005, I'm sitting at my desk and I got the latest research of that year. I'm sitting at my desk and said, wow, if we could do this and this and this, we'd live 140 years. Now, average life expectancy in this country is 78. And if everybody suddenly had the 5 basic habits, within 25 years, the average life expectancy would go up to 100. We are DNA equipped at birth to live 100 years. The average person with good health habits loses 1% of that every year. It's the tips of your DNA. It's called telomeres. And so I wrote a book called Life Beyond 100. And I went to 47 cities to talk about that book. And, 100, 200, or 300 people come in every city. And I learned that most people had a death wish. I was shocked. It was the only, that's the only thing Freud ever wrote that I think was correct. I call him Freud the fraud otherwise. He wrote that most people have a death wish. And people were angry, and I was saying they could live to be 100, let alone beyond 100. I don't know why they came to hear me. But I demonstrated over the next 5 years that we could, instead of shrinking our telomeres 1% a year, we could regrow them 3.5% a year. Now, at 85 years of age, I have telomeres that are 30 years younger than I am. And I have 50 other people who've done the same thing. Not because I want to live forever, only I just want to be healthy. I don't care if I die tomorrow as long as I'm healthy. I want to die healthy, not dwindling, as I call it. Now, all these years, I have created 15 patentable medical things. 5 of them were given to me by what I call my guide, an angel teacher who comes to me and tells me things. For instance, one day we were over in Holland, and I got an image. I was out jogging or something, and I got an image of a copper pyramid. So go back to my room and drew it down. 36 hours later, the guy, G I call him, said, Norman, where do you think that image you got yesterday came from? I said, I thought it was mine. He said, I put it there. You to do research on it. He doesn't tell me what kind of research I'm doing. I have to do all the work to do it, but I did. And so I reasoned then that if we attached a certain kind of energy to that copper pyramid, it would regrow telomeres. And it would treat rheumatoid arthritis, for instance. And we actually treated 75 people by putting them into this copper pyramid activated by a Tesla coil. And we had a 70% cure rate within 2 weeks. That led to one thing after another. And so my intuition is largely around creating gadgets and techniques for helping people to heal. And I just, that's my passion. At the present time, my latest device, which I'm not going to release public until the end of September, is to cure narcotic addicts. We have an experiment going on with the most remarkable results I have ever seen in a narcotic addict. These are locked up people. They're not running the streets. And within 1 to 3 months, for the first time in their lives, since they can remember, they're feeling good and healthy. So over the next couple of days, we're going to talk about how you can optimize your intuition to be healthy. And then use it for however else you want to do. See you tomorrow.
Just going to lead him in a prayer. Okay, so I'm going to close down with a little prayer, and then you're going to go and have a cocktail. So, yeah, right. Okay. I love the prayers of Teresa. I love her image of Teresa of Avila. And I love this. So when you go to bed tonight, I love this. I want you to just picture yourself under a starry sky and close your eyes. And then hover over me, Lord. Let the angels take me out of my bed tonight. Take me into the celestial realm. Let the grace of healing flow through my soul. Let the angels work on me through the night. Let them cleanse me of all in the ways that my soul holds on to things I should not hold on to any longer. Let the grace heal my heart of suffering and my body of long ago aches that I should have released. Let the pieces of my broken heart stay broken and fill them in with love. It takes a lot to break a heart open. Keep it open, Lord, and let me fill those places with love. Hover over me, Lord. Let the angels return me to my body in the morning, a much healthier person than I am now.